This is really packed room for a talk pitch where I basically said it's not a talk. I'm being opportunistic and I'm wanting a whole bunch of designers with diverse backgrounds and experience to give me some of your insights and thoughts and feedback on a topic that I'm struggling with. So a little bit of background, as I said at the pitch this morning, I'm a designer by trade, done it for a really long time. And for the last couple of years, I've been the head of design at Telstra Purple, which was an amazing opportunity. And over the last few months, I've stepped into a role as a head of technology strategy. And so I'm having conversations with a lot of really senior people in organizations about their technology strategy. And as you can imagine, a really central theme of a lot of those conversations is AI. Should we do it? Should we ban it? What do we do? What is our approach to it? How do we go about doing this in a way that is safe, it's ethical, it's not going to freak out people out? There's all these different questions. And so through all of these conversations, I kind of noticed that there's a bit of an approach or an adoption kind of curve that customers will go on. They're all at different sort of stages of this journey. But there's a common theme across every single one of those stages in that the focus is really, really tight, just the technology. And so I know that there's a lot of people in here that have got backgrounds in like product design and things like that. But what I'd like you to do is just back at the mind, start getting that ethnographic kind of muscle working, because these are all things that are going to be implemented into people's businesses, into their organizations. That's going to impact their people, how they work, the tools that they're using, the speed at which they work, what their day at work looks like, the tools that they're using. And so I want to think about the opportunities and the approaches that you might take to improve how those things are implemented in a customer's business. So I'll give you some of the examples that I'm thinking, that my intuition is telling me. It's kind of seeding those ideas with you, but don't take them too seriously. I don't want to seed too much. And then once I've gone through the kind of 4 stages that we've sort of identified of businesses adopting these technologies, I've got some post-its. It wouldn't be a design conference without a couple of post-its on the wall. I just want to capture from you as an audience, like what are those opportunities, what are those approaches you might take to better understand who we're deploying this technology to and how to help them get the most out. Make sense? Cool, awesome. So the first sort of one that we see, no business that we've spoken to is really like, we're going to jump all in on AI, 2 feet first, into the deep end. Let's do this. It's pretty rare. There's a lot of trepidation. There's a lot of tentativeness. There's a lot of organizations that are like, we're banning it. Now, I could go on a rabbit hole of why I think that that's short-term, maybe okay, but long-term, a really bad idea. But that's not what we're here to sort of talk about today. And so you start to see that, a lot of them, in terms of the first AI tool that they've adopted, some of them are adopted already. Well, a lot of the time when we're talking about AI, at least in recent history, we're talking about LLMs, GPTs, those kinds of things. And for AI is obviously a lot broader than that. My toothbrush apparently has AI. I don't know how, but apparently it does. So we've got tools that are built into the products and services that we use now. So there's a level of comfort around that. So some of the examples that we see pretty commonly, those 2 logos, if you don't recognize them, one of them is Genesis, another one is called Dot. And this is something that, as Telstra, seen a lot about contact center solutions. And they've got AI tools built in now that customers can deploy that have a very finite set of things that they're able to do. So it's kind of like a traditional product. Like it does what it says on the box and nothing else. And so what these things do typically is they'll listen to the call that's being had, and they can run a couple of things. Like they can transcribe it, which is kind of cool. Like for this call is being recorded purposes. But some of the cool new tricks that they can do is things like sentiment analysis. They can understand if the customer's happy, if they're frustrated, if they're angry, and because they know what's being said and the sentiment that's aligned to it, they can get some insights into, we got a lot of calls. We've got a local council that's using some of these tools. We got a lot of calls with lots of people that are angry about bins. Yeah, and so like bins, kind of a problem this month, and so you can make business decisions around that. So they're really sort of basic productized tools and offerings. Then you go on to the thing that most people are thinking about really, really deeply right now. This is GPTs, co-pilots. Yeah. So they've been around for a really long time. And so, we think about our developers, Telstra Purple, we've got heaps of developers that work with us. The vast majority of them that I speak to, they've been using it for a long time. Like Copilot on GitHub has been around for a year. I know the Copilot's on everything else in Office and everything at relatively new, but Copilot on GitHub, it's been around for a while. AWS Code, Whisper, there's a whole bunch of them. But now we're starting to see it coming and being democratized to more and more people. And businesses are starting to think about, okay, but how do we deploy that and keep things safe? So I was talking to an organization, a financial organization, a very large one, yesterday afternoon. And they deployed this to some of their people. And one of their employees had just queried the Copilot, like, hey, what's the ROI on Copilot for our business? And it was able to find a document that was a COP, a board paper. But that wasn't the AI's fault. That was the way that they structured their data. And so it's starting to expose cracks in some of the way that they've set their organization up. So with these, we're starting to see a couple of different approaches to how it's deployed. Sometimes they kind of throw it in and they're like, there's a new tool. See how you go with it. And what happens is that you get table stakes user engagement with that tool. Like they'll use it, but they'll use it to record meetings and get action points. And it's kind of like a C+ personal assistant. It's okay, but it's not great. And you're getting that kind of real entry level use of the tool because they don't know what else it could do for them. But what we've started to see, and this is through some internal deployments and a couple of customer deployments, is when we've taken the time to understand the user, understand their workflow, and identified one specific use case where we've come in and we've gone, hey, this is the tool that we're going to give to you. Like, yeah, you get all the table stakes, meeting recording, all that kind of stuff. But this one task that you do all the time, it's going to help do that faster or better or more easily. And what we've noticed is that when people are given that kind of education, they start coming up with other new ideas because they understand the tool, they understand what it's capable of beyond that base functionality, and they start coming up with these green shoot ideas of like, well, I could use it over here. I could use it in this, and I could use it in that. I watched one of our government sales teams using Big Chat Enterprise to analyze a milestone payment in real time to realize that it was out by 7 cents. Like salespeople who'd been shown this thing just 2 weeks ago automatically started to use it to analyze their own documents before they send it to customers. So these green shoots are great opportunities for the business to go, that's a really good idea. Let's put some fertilizer on that. Let's water that, grow it, and then separate, sort of share that out across the entire organization. But that requires effort. And so there's an opportunity for designers to get engaged here in my mind. I think that, it's not product design, but it's ethnography, it's research, it's understanding what workers do, it's understanding the workflows and processes that they follow, as well as understanding the technology and marrying those two. Understanding the tools, it's understanding the people, and it's finding opportunities for those two things to harmonize. You only have to find some of the examples, and then that gives you the opportunity to have those green shoots come from the people that you deploy to. So I think there's a design opportunity to improve the business benefit of AI deployments as an organization. The next step is when businesses have done this and they're like, hey, this is really cool, but they've done it well. How do I make one of these for myself? Yeah. And so we've been having conversations with customers around building their own interface and chat bots and things like that inside of their organization for quite some time. We've built some inside of Telstra. They're quite cool. Yeah. And 6 months ago, it was the thing that you had to have a relatively high level of skill to be able to do. You had to kind of know what you were doing to create a custom instance, make sure that it was trained only on your data, and make sure that it was responding with a level of precision that was acceptable in a business context. Somebody this morning, they're talking about hallucination. AIs will just competently lie to you sometimes. So you've got to try to iron that out of the machine. Now, there's a huge opportunity here for design to play a role in what are these tools, what are the bots, what are they doing, what are they trained on, and even for, being parts of the team now that can actually build them based on particular user problems and user requirements, particularly with some of the tools that have come out last week. So I know there's some OpenAI, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, did a presentation last week about their new GPT creator. I don't know if anyone sort of saw it, but as I said, it was kind of tricky to make this stuff 6 months ago. He on stage built one in minutes. So he previously was the CEO of Y Combinator. It's like a startup accelerator kind of thing. And his idea was like, it'd be great if I could give startup founders the advice, the knowledge that I'd accrued as a decade as the founder, or as the CEO, sorry, of Y Combinator. And so he got all the transcripts of every talk, every panel, and everything that he'd been on, 10 years as the CEO of Y Combinator, and trained a bot on stage so that you could get Sam Altman's advice on your startup in minutes, in a live demo. So there's an opportunity for us to be going and thinking about these kinds of custom tools as ways to solve problems that we as a designer have identified. We've got to understand. The last one is where you start to think about how do these things layer up on top of each other. So as an example, the local council example that I gave you before, they've got that specialized productized tool that can listen to the call, understand what's being said, understand the sentiment, all of that on top of that. At the other end of the spectrum, where you've got that high interaction, it's trained just on your business data. We're having a conversation with that customer now where they're building that internal bot for their customer service facing staff that can in real time be prompted, and they can ask it questions about policy, about guidelines, rules, regulations, anything and everything is trained on the data of that particular local council area. And on the other side, you've got this thing that's listening to the call that they're having with the resident. Why does the squishy human need to put the prompt in and ask that trained model over here the question on behalf of that customer? If they're having a conversation and that's being captured and understood, why not have one AI generate a prompt for the LLM over here that understands everything about that organization's data and have a sidebar that's presenting information in real time so that the humans can have a natural conversation. There's no, let me put you on hold while I look that up. It's been looked up. It's right there. And so calls are answered more quickly. Calls are handled more quickly at a higher level of customer service and a higher level of perceived expertise for the person speaking to you. So these are kind of some of the business benefits that we're sort of talking to across all of that. So I think there's huge opportunities for design to be more engaged in the scoping, the implementation, and even in the building, now that some of this is being made so easy for us to kind of get in and start building. So what I wanted to do is just grab some Post-it notes. Okay. I want to get your ideas for spec AI problem. Should take down the high top. Just a joke. He was in here speaking before. So I've got spec AI product. So that's the first one here, specialized AI product tools. Where can design play and what kinds of activities do you think we might do to sort of help identify opportunities for that and ensure a successful implementation? Then we've got general specialization. So like where you've got things like Microsoft Copilot, where should design get involved in terms of helping businesses understand where they should be deploying? It's really expensive. It's not something that you're going to give to all of your people. How do you pick who? And of those people, how do you identify what processes they should be automating through AI? The third one being that high interaction, training your own internal model. Where does design get involved in that? Like, do we have a role to play there? And if we do, what does that look like? What are some of the techniques that we've got in our toolkit that we should be using? And then the vertical stack. So I'll start with the first one. Any ideas of like, what could we be doing in helping bringing a design lens to the identification of opportunities for and implementation of very narrow AI tools?
Lena, I've got a thought that doesn't necessarily fit into one of the buckets, but it's around governance. And I guess we speak about the potential of being in the wrong hands or laziness, perhaps. So whether it's design that has ownership, but I guess definition of governance and who's going to take responsibility, and is it smaller codes across all? It's across all, yeah, but I'll just table it.
It's a good idea. So governance, and this is something that, to the example with the financial institution that I spoke to earlier, it wasn't the AI's fault that the information that shouldn't have been exposed was exposed. It was data, like that person had access to that information. The AI just expedited their access. Yeah.
Thinking, is this narrow internal, service design, blueprinting, internal workflow analysis, task flows, mapping those out, looking for friction points, things that take a long time. Often people who've been doing it internally for a very long time sort of get used to it, right? They don't know that it could be a better way.
Yeah.
So sort of on top of the onion there, and then exposing opportunities for that very specific targeted use cases might be where we could have one out either.
going down the getting used to it thing, another element of design under the wide umbrella, not necessarily UX. What about change management? We're throwing this new thing in that's a paradigm shifting tool. What can we do there? Okay, right.
Talk about AI being adopted. What about monitoring that? Like sentiment analysis for start with, how you pick the right audience or right sampling size, make sure that you keep evolving, keep training that model to do better. That's something that again I think design team should be look at how to pick that right sizing and helping the business tailor that experience altogether.
So iteration,
and monitoring.
Perfect. Yes.
I was thinking of, we're talking to our clients about AI stuff at the moment, and a lot of it we emphasise is equivalent to showcases. So it's like giving people access to GPTs, whichever one they happen to be using, but sharing that knowledge through weekly or bi-weekly get-togethers and just saying, what have you been using AI for, and helping self-educate and for those sprouts to seed.
Perfect. So showcasing and sharing so that other people are like, I can't use that, but I can use that idea in my own.
I just had a thought on education and change management, because I know you mentioned the toothbrush with AI as an example, right? But then once it starts to become something kind of wider, like just using ChatGPT as an example, it's like the level of suspicion and education required increases, the more broader and I guess general specialization it is. So I'm not sure if like as designers we should always think about specialized product tools are better, but more integration and more familiarity. I think that, I don't know, I'm seeing a graph in my mind, but
Is that like the designer being familiar with the tools?
the actual user being familiar with it. So as you said, the toothbrush is almost like it's invisible, making it invisible, versus when it should just be general and you are using AI.
Yeah.
I'm curious how we navigate that. More of a thought.
I think it's a really good point because, like, and this is something that comes up all the time. The average person that like maybe has kind of toyed around with AI, they're like, yeah, Copilot, ChatGPT, same thing. No, one of them, the data doesn't, like your organization's data that you're pasting into it doesn't go to the open internet to train a model. The other one does. So, and that's a pretty big difference from most organizations' perspectives. It's a really good call out. It's like, how do you control that? Is it a human level thing? Is it a training thing? Is it something that we can implement in systems and processes?
I guess from like just workers using it, the level of resistance is probably less when it's more invisible and more guardrailed, I guess, which is more specialized tool.
You're going somewhere where I think that I'd like to sort of explore the guardrails, guidelines. So is that something design should play a role in, we think, or is that something that's just technical?
I think yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd love to get people in a room and ask them to just map out, like, what are all the things they do, whether you call it jobs to be done or just like, what's the work that they do, and then map it, do like an impact effort mapping, and then start to say let's look at these categories and where can AI play a part. And I think that would help if you actually go to teams. It would help with change management because they're buying in from the beginning to, well, let's get all of the low high effort, low impact stuff. Can any of this be pawned off to AI? So you're from a starting place of we're improving your experience of work.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's an opportunity for design and more technical peeps to collab. Because like we can't all as designers be expected to be like experts in some of these technologies and their capabilities and limitations, but we're experts at getting information out of humans. And if we're pairing with those technical people, it's a match made in heaven for sort of starting to map an organization and understand where AI can fit.
Working on a lot of use cases personally, and particularly that fourth phase around cognition. One of the biggest issues that we face is involving the human influence, because with the low interaction, sometimes you're expecting a magic one scenario where suddenly you generate something that is perfect, right? But reality is more often than not, it's not. And having those human guardrails is the difficult part to design for, because you really need to make sure that whatever is being generated, it has been reviewed by human. And sometimes that can mean, kind of blockers in automation, but at the same time, it's kind of a necessary thing.
Yeah, it's a necessary thing.
Yeah.
I think that's good, and like so many of the conversations we have, a really good point, are around absolutely like the human in the loop is critical. You saw the examples this morning with like the analysis, and thank you for pulling out a T25 strategy. The incorrect analysis of the Telstra T25 strategy, like a human in the loop is going to catch that, so it's critically important. But how do you make it as easy as possible, right, by surfacing information in such a way and layering it up that human can pass it really quickly? There's a design challenge in that in and of itself.
So one of the things I think design specifically can come in is a lot of this discussion is really in the weeds with what does the tool do today, what can it be done tomorrow or very short term. And I think if we look at, say, the GPT example you gave last week, something that only 6 months ago would have required an expert developer a few weeks to have built with a back-end vector database and all the shit that you needed, be able to do in 3 minutes now. So I think design has the opportunity to be more forward-thinking than just what's the tool doing today, because likely we here are not going to move fast enough as much as the AI vendors are, and the startups, they're going to be ahead of us and jump in and say, oh, we've solved that problem. Now we don't need this bit to do it internally. So I think there's a long-term vision there to say, and in the long term, I mean 1 year, maybe 2 years, to how for design to come in and say, overarching, how is this going to change our business? And I just drew a couple of examples of, if back in the early 2000s, I think it was, Microsoft did a bunch of videos on the future vision of the future office, which are well worth, for those who haven't seen them, well worth seeing on YouTube. Corning did another one called The Future of Glass, or The Day of Glass. And these are all, what's the future going to be with office and technology and things? And I think a lot of that's coming to fruition now, and it wasn't there then. And I think we've got that same opportunity to say, well, what does, let's say, what does a superannuation company, how could it use it? I could use this to be able to sort this and do something. But what would it be like if it was all AI? Where are we going to in literally 3 years' time? What's it going to look like where it's so dramatically different?
Blue sky strategy.
Yeah, that's right. And I think designers have got a really creative view on that technologists don't have, that business strategy people don't necessarily have.
And I think to add on to that, the opportunity for designers is to bring some ethics to that approach. Like so many of the kind of thought experiments that I see being run around like AI, it's just like get more work out of the same number of people kind of stuff. Like it's very productivity or maximizing profitability. How do we make people's jobs better, more fun? There is other advantages that can be realized through these tools, and designers are the ones that are going to need to be thinking about these things. Because we're the empaths, we're the ones that kind of can kind of connect with that and identify where those opportunities lie.
So just riffing off that, we often talk about design principles, right? You're about to build a product, you're about to bring a team together, you have a social contract, or if you're building a product, what are the guidelines for what this product should and shouldn't do? It should empower advanced users, not isolate novice users. It should be blue, it should be mobile first, whatever those principles are. There's nothing stopping designers following the same. That's a toolkit that we've been doing for very long time. Using that to drive, we don't call it design principles, but it can sort of fall into ethical principles for that piece of technology. But hey, before we go too far down the rabbit hole, we're about to release this thing in the wild. Let's agree some principles, some guidelines. What should it do? What should it not do? And as we're good at asking questions. I think that's one of our superpowers that we should do, because often, as you said, we get stuck into the weeds around the technology itself. The technology is agnostic. Replace AI with freaking Google Glass, replace it with NFT.
It's just the thing that everyone's talking about.
But we should keep asking ourselves and putting some design principles down, writing them down and pointing to it. So when we start to see this going off piece, we're starting to break this constitution.
Perpetual posted on the wall.
Should we?
100%. There was one more, I think.
Yeah,
And then that's all I've got.
it's sort of on the same point. I feel it's our job to police bias. It's our job to police bias.
These bias. Yeah.
So AI has got to a certain point where we can actually, perform something and create something really creative and a beautiful object. But it's us, the art director, to give a voice and to speak and also point out where something's unethical or, or going down a rabbit hole. And that's looking at the political spectrum as well. So like it's, IR can, get really violent very quickly. And just to realise, when we are entering a dangerous political space, it's crossing over into very similar, similar places. And it's our job to police.
You're standing up, which I'm assuming is your subtle way of saying stop talking now. So I cannot thank you. And as I said, this wasn't a planned talk. I presented a slide that's got out. I hate people that do that at conferences, but this was really useful for me. I'm as a designer, as I said, by trade and at my core, and I want to, as I said, get as many kind of perspectives on these conversations that we are having with our customers and ensuring that I bring that kind of real, thoughtful design lens to our approaches with that. I hope it was useful. I hope it was insightful and kind of interesting, but it was really useful for me. So thanks.